you this, and I've wanted to ask you this since 2013, and it's in relation to I've waited all this time, and it's in relation to the role that you play in the employment figures. And it particularly concerns me because in 2013, you rightly reported in terms of how you do your stats that 29.8% of the 61,000 jobs that were purported to be new jobs that were created that year. That's 26,800 of those jobs that they came from the agriculture, forestry and fishing. And that figure of 61,000 was repeated ad nauseum as being an accurate figure of a reflection of new jobs created in the country, when we know that there weren't 515 jobs created in agriculture each week, or 73 jobs per day at the height of the recession. And I know that you did put a caveat in there in terms of how you were reporting them, and I think this is where the weakness is, maybe, in a sense that you put the caveat in there, but it was ran with in both through the media and through government as being that was in fact that those jobs, that 26,800 new jobs were created in farming when we knew them not to be true. And I think that in some way reflects people's maybe lack of confidence sometimes, the ordinary people on the ground, their lack of confidence in CSO figures, because they don't maybe read the caveats or understand the caveats to it. So maybe just to talk just a little bit around how do we avoid that happening again, I suppose?
First of all, I would like to think that people trust the data that the CSO provide, and I think we certainly put a lot of effort and time into ensuring that the information we put into the public domain is accurate and to the highest standard possible. So I would certainly hope that position is there. I think Brian is probably best placed to answer the question on the specific sector.
Yeah. So thanks, Senator, in terms of the questions. I would have been part of the QNHS team since 2009, so I would have been involved in 2013, etc. I suppose in terms of managing the message at the time, you're absolutely correct. We would have informed users with regard to the, I suppose, the caveats around agricultural employment. I think the phrase we would have urged caution in the interpretation of the trends at this time, something along those words. In terms of what we were saying and in terms of the message behind that, we would have acknowledged that we had issues with our agricultural figures. But what we had said at the time, and what we still believe, is that the sum of the parts was correct, so that the overall change in employment at that time was correct, but the distribution across what we would refer to as the NACE or the industrial sectors at the time was where we had the problem. I think that at the time would have arisen from and the work we've done and the work we're continuing to do at the moment in terms of we are still working towards, I suppose, retrospectively revise the data to take account of exactly what you're saying, would have been in the capturing of data from I suppose, houses which would be agricultural. So agriculture would stand out, I suppose, uniquely among the 14 broad sectors that we produce as being very focused from the point of view of the location of the person in employment. Because obviously agriculture will be very closely linked to farmers, and farmers are very closely linked to farm dwellings. But what we would have said was that the overall figures that we would have published through the time of that you're referring to is that the overall figures, we would be happy with the overall figures, but the distribution by sector was what we would have flagged a caution on at the time in 2013.
I'd just like that we actually have changed our sampling approach because there was a specific sampling issue that gave rise to an element of that issue. So it was sometimes, obviously, within surveys you can be subject to sampling errors, and the sampling error for that particular sector, unfortunately, was larger than we would normally have. So we actually have changed the sampling. We undertook a methodological project. Our statistical methods and development team undertook a review of the QNHS sample, and we have now changed the sampling methodology behind the QNHS to ensure that those types of issues won't arise again.
Yeah, I think there was a change at the time as well in terms of the status of farming within the Department of Agriculture, I think as well at the time, that influenced that in some way. And I suppose what it comes back to is there a role for the CSO, or almost an add-on role in terms of information, knowledge, recommendations that you can make kind of beyond producing the statistics? And I suppose first, can you see if there's a role there, and what would you need to be able to do a more maybe analytical role?
Just, I suppose, what I might point you towards, Senator, is the National Statistics Board strategy, and they provide the strategic guidance to the CSO. And the CSO's role actually changed in 2015 through two mechanisms. One was through the EU. The change in EU law means that the Director General of the CSO is no longer just responsible for statistics compiled by the CSO. So I am now responsible for official statistics compiled right across the system, for European statistics compiled right across public sector. So there are 15 other agencies in the state that currently compile European statistics. So if there's an issue with the European statistic now compiled by one of those entities, Eurostat come to the CSO, they come to me, and they will hold me responsible to address that issue. But the National Stats Board strategy has also said that the CSO should be coordinating right across the public sector to put structures and strategies in place that the data that is collected for a primary purpose can actually subsequently be used for secondary processing in support of statistical products. So we are now, we actually now have put a new directorate in place, which is our Statistical Coordination Directorate, and we are now actively engaging right across the broader public service to develop skill sets, to develop data infrastructures that will allow all of us make better usage of the information that's already been collected, that the citizens have already provided to us, so that we can provide better evidence and to inform decision making right across the system. I'm sure it will take time, but it's a process that is well underway, and we've had an awful lot of very positive engagement right across the system.
Okay.